Thanks so much, Catherine. Thank you, Michelle, and thanks for everybody for joining. So what we want to do by I've got Mark Miller here on the line. Also, Mark and I work in for Slalom, and we work in a Salesforce practice that's focused on contact centers and digital channels and field service and service in general. We're not here to sell you Salesforce. That this we specifically are here to talk about bots at a general perspective, because we understand that there are multiple technologies that are out there that are capable of doing what we're talking about, but we feel like that there is a consistency in the messaging and the realities of building a bot. We also will probably, you'll hear us use the word chatbot today because that's where the industry has started. But the reality is we've implemented this across Facebook messaging, across WhatsApp, across text messaging, and then also even have built a bot that answers to Facebook and Twitter and a couple of other socials. So the concept of chatbot is because that's what people have accepted. It's the channel has been accepted, but it's actually being pushed into other digital channels. So where I usually start with folks about bots is, so where are we in this experiment of bots? And the reality is that bots have the ability to do more than sometimes we've all been on a website where a bot popped up and you ask it a question and it said, I don't understand. You ask it a different way and it says, I don't understand. And you're just stuck. You're just there. Now what happens? So the complexity of bots have definitely increased over the last 5 years. For a while, I worked at Blue Wolf, which got bought by IBM, and we were building bots using using Watson, and we ran into the same opportunities, the same gaps, the same risks, the same issues. So what is a bot? What do we expect it to do? Well, first of all, we expect it to understand. So using that natural language processing, NLP, the bot should be able to understand language well. So the nuances of the English language, the nuances of accents, all of that should be built into what the platform that you're choosing. The second of all, it should be able to interact. And so it should be able to ask clarifying questions. It should be able to respond with what it thinks the answer is and ask for validation. It should ask those kind of questions, and then it should answer. And what we mean here is it should unlock knowledge. So you should be able to connect your bot to a knowledge base or to a knowledge repository where it has the ability to understand what's in that repository and be able to respond to the question. And then the last one is the guide. And in my experience, this is when, like, we did some work at a very large technical support organization, and what they wanted was they were taking cases online, and so what they realized is the experience was causing them to have a case where somebody didn't give them enough information, and so they were spending time going back to the customer on an outbound call, the agents were, to ask a clarifying question to confirm something. And so it was wasting a lot of time. So what we did there is built a bot that is built to ask questions, to confirm information, to validate that we have enough information to now turn you over to a live agent. And so the ability to guide you to the live agent, the ability to even go into systems, databases, and understand where you are in your buying process, where you are in your service process, perhaps what your last interaction was, what your last purchase was, and be able to bring that information into the conversation that the bot is having with the person. So understand, interact, answer, and guide are definitely the realities of where bots are today. So the question that I get asked a lot is, what's the development cycle? And Mark, I'm going to ask you to jump in here a little bit because you live this, you and your team live this every day. Is the first step is to assess what you're looking for the bot to do. So this is when Mark sort of listens to what they're saying with the questions follow up to say, well, is that really what you want it to do? Because what we often do with bots is the first step most people think about is, well, I'm going to put my FAQs into the bot. My description of what that's like, it's like buying a Lamborghini and deciding that you're only going to drive it to church every other week because you've left so much possibility on the table if all you do are FAQs. FAQs are available in other formats. So from the assess perspective, it's about understanding what they want the bot to do and to establish clear KPIs. Mark, what did I miss? Did I miss anything?
No, it's a good call out. I think the key thing is not to look at what's the easiest effort as far as what you already have from an answers perspective, but to look at where your customers are getting stuck and where they need help, right? And what they're struggling with. And you know, if you're building a bot purely because you want to serve up the same answers you already have in kind of a different format, I would advise you that you know, probably isn't worth the effort. Now I just have another place to maintain the same thing that already wasn't addressing the issue, right? So this is an opportunity to really look at where are customers struggling to get answers. Why do they feel like they need to pick up a phone to get help? Why do they need to chat with an agent, email, whatever? And really come at it from that perspective and not from the perspective of, you know, what easy answers do we have and how do we get that into the bot, right? In the assess phase anyways.
So from a time element, I'm gonna speed up a little bit because I realized I was supposed to talk for 10 minutes and I think I'm at 8 or something like that. There's a lot to share, but I'm looking forward to your questions. Then you build the bot with existing data. And so that's the point I was making earlier. It's not just about, it's about bringing data from multiple places, bringing data from a knowledge base, bringing data from databases that have information about the customer. There's also a question about, at that point, am I going to have an authenticated bot or an unauthenticated bot? And what I mean by that is the person going to log in somewhere on a portal or on a website in order to be behind and us to know who they are? Or are we doing this in a general practice where the bot needs to gather all the information that it can in order to answer the question? Secondarily, you're going to go into a testing mode. You're going to test the conversation flows, the model performance, and all of the conversations that are happening. You're going to test trying to break it. There was an example Mark and his team, Chris, had this week of how much it took to break their bot of the general questions that were being asked. So while I was on the line with him, I got on and broke it pretty quickly. So it's possible to break it, even though you think it's not, but you're trying to understand what is the bot bringing forward? What are those flows like? And then it's time to deploy. Mark and I spoke at a webinar back in the early days of COVID, and in one of the first Zoom webinars I ever did with a client, and I asked the client, so tell me, how good was your bot when it was deployed? And he said, well, if I'm honest, it sucked. And so my question on Teams chat for Mark was, dude, tell me this customer is not unhappy with his bot. And he said, well, hang on a second. All bots are not going to be as good as they should be. And so I liken this to being a trainer in a call center. When I hire a new employee, I put them through front end training. I put them through beginning training, and I have an onboarding process. But when I put them on the floor for the first time, I know they're not going to be as seasoned as they need to be. And so what do? I coach them. I do quality on them. I do more quality. I listen to them. And then I give them feedback on how to be better at what they do. And that's the point where, to me, the bot becomes what it's possible to be. Listening to the running reports that tell you what are the questions that were asked that we didn't have answers for. Running reports that ask, what are the words or the phrases or the flows that are not working? Because no matter how good you are with the assessment, how good you are with the building and the testing, the customer is going to surprise you. By the way, one other thing is to, when you're in that assess phase, always talk to your agents about what you're thinking about, how you're thinking about building the bot, because they will point out words that aren't the same that the customer uses that what you use. So then I'm going to monitor, as I said, I'm going to deploy it, I'm going to monitor it, I'm going to spend some time tracking the bot, model performance, and then I'm going to iterate. I'm going to go back and train the bot again. And most likely that is going to continue. I'm going to assess where we are. I'm going to build the bot a little bit differently. I'm going to test it. I'm going to deploy it. And so it's a constant circle. So one of the things I wanted you to talk about, Mark, was tell me about utterances and intents and dialogue.
So dialogue is the bot's response, right? So that is whatever you tell it to say when it's asked a particular question. The particular question is the utterance. The intent is the bot trying to figure out what that utterance means and mapping it to a response. So multiple utterances map to multiple intents, which map to theoretically that one response. So you'll have lots of different dialogues, and a good, let me give a real world example. If I tell somebody watching my house to put frozen food in the freezer, and then somebody hands them something cold and says, hey, put this in the ice box, right? That's not an exact match on utterance, but it's an exact match maybe on intent, which was inferred from the first training. So the more training you give that's specific, the better, and the less potential confusion. Like maybe I used icebox somewhere else, and that may create confusion, right? Is he describing a cooler or a freezer, right? I'm not sure. So this is where the training is kind of an art form and a science of understanding the model you're working with.
So on the next slide, Michelle, I just put together a couple of really cool things that have gone on in the last 6 months of us building bots. Some really cool things that Mark and his team has been able to accomplish. They have the ability to use natural language processing in 105 different languages. But what's important about that is you can train the bot in English and it learns and responds in one of those 105 languages. So no one's going to have 105 in one time, but you'd be surprised. Was it Cajun Creole, Mark? Cajun Creole was a response that was someone asked for, and it's one of the languages that is it can learn from.
Only in Florida.
Only in Florida.
But yeah, it's a thing.
So I talked about earlier about extending the bot to social media, to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, being able to extend to the messaging platforms. That's really what digital channels are, and the reason why that's important. And then it has the ability, we've given it the ability to embed videos into the bot and to inline images and alias links and all of the different rich user interfaces that are part of that little pop-up window, that little bot. And then last is the ability, as I talked before, about connecting them to knowledge base for quick answers.